What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the 20 Percenters, where we focus on what matters: health, wealth, relationships, and time. And I have the honor of sitting down with the father of the future, Luke Kayyem. We go all the way back to 2010. You don't even know it. 2010, December. I just got home from Afghanistan and signed up for my level 1 at CrossFit Scottsdale.
The CrossFit Scottsdale, for those of you that are old enough to know.
And Jason Khalifa led my L1. I met you very briefly that weekend, and we've run around each other in the same circles for quite some time. We just recently reconnected as you have incepted Fathers of the Future, which is a very powerful message in this day and age. And being a father of a 3-year-old boy and a 18-month-old daughter, it really speaks to where I'm at, but it resonates with a wide net of people. Walk us through the shift from a career, a life dedicated to fitness, and then into the evolution of executive coaching and Fathers of the Future.
Yeah, so Fathers of the Future is really where it's at. It just so happened that my son is actually in my office right now on a school day. That's just the way the universe works, and I subscribe to it, my brother. So, for me, I grew up without a father. He was a phantom, as I call him now. Looking back, he existed, but nobody knew who he was or where he was. He had walked away from his own side of the family long before he walked away from my mom.
Okay.
And I have a half-brother and a half-sister with 2 different moms, all on my dad's side. And I grew up, not in a broken home, but it was missing some pieces.
Sure.
And a big part of that was having a male role model and a father figure around. So I got wild. I got loose, and I was very resentful. Unfortunately, I did play sports because as an only child, my mom was 43 when she had me. I had to learn how to party by myself. And movement and being outdoors, growing up in Hawaii and Southern California was a big base for how I lived and how I was raised. And fast forward, 20 years or so, and I'm a full-grown man, and I still don't have what I needed, out of that male role model, that father figure.
Yeah.
And it was a huge void. It was a gap in my life, so much so that I sedated through drugs and alcohol and partying and money and women and whatever I could to really lose focus on what mattered, because I just didn't know what mattered. I didn't know that there was another universe and world out there that supported me and that loved me and cared about me. And I dramatically lost my mom at 24. And for me, I was very alone and empty at a time in my life where I needed to be around people, and I was around the wrong people. And fortunately, I got into fitness after I dropped out of college my freshman year at 18 because I had to hustle. And my mom was like, all right, well, you're not going to go to USC, then you better get a job.
Right. And
between parking cars and working the front desk at the local Globo gym, I was athletic. I was hungry. I could hustle. And I was making money. So I had no intention on going back to school.
Right.
And then my mom passes away at 24 and, kind of just really lost drinking, partying, doing bicep curls, right? I was about 35 pounds bigger than this, and it wasn't necessarily overweight and fat. It was just unhealthy.
Yeah.
It was just carrying around a whole lot of shit. If my organs could have shown what they look like, and my mindset, it would have been uglier than the pre-photos that I had. And a couple months later, I left Hawaii, and I ran into my wife. My wife is my high school sweetheart that I've known from 7th grade, the mother of my 2 children. And long story short, we got back together. I left Hawaii, got married, and at that time the real estate boom was on its way down. Okay. And I had residential properties all over the country and, sold them and realized I needed to get a job. And we were in Los Angeles at the time. My son was 10 months old, and I was, again, missing something. and not really knowing what that something was until now. Looking back, it was structure.
Yeah.
It was discipline. It was having consistency. It was having a morning routine. It was having a regiment. And got married, had my son, and we decided to move to Scottsdale because we didn't want to raise our kids in Los Angeles in Southern California. And we moved here in 2007. And right about that time, the economy was shifting. And I was like, well, I know how to hustle.
Right.
I know fitness. Let me get back into it. Made a phone call, started working at the Gold's Gym on Raintree.
Yeah.
And within 2 weeks, between the shitty trainer who was smoking in between clients.
Get out of here.
And the guy who got in trouble for murder months later, I was the go-to, right? And true story on both those guys. I started working in the fitness industry again.
Yeah.
And about that time, my good friend and lifelong colleague, Chris Lillane, who's in relationship, he's the great grandson of Jack LaLanne.
Yeah.
He said, hey, man, you got to try this CrossFit thing. And I tried it, and that was the game changer. And within 6 months, we opened the first affiliate in the Scottsdale area. I think there was one in Flag and one in Phoenix, so very small.
Yeah.
And we saw great success, and, now I've got a daughter. And I realized in that moment that the game needed to change. You said shift earlier. I'm always looking at it as the game had to change. The game I was playing needed to change. And for me, it was getting sober.
Okay.
And I got sober in 2008, and CrossFit started booming.
Yeah.
And I started competing. And, that gap got smaller and smaller and smaller. And then the ego came into play again, which has always been at the forefront of my life, having a chip on my shoulder.
Okay.
And the ego said, open up as many gyms as you can, go against CrossFit. This is your jam. You're the one who built these systems and these standards. There's no...
Yeah.
And I needed to go through that.
Okay.
Because since then, I've realized that the ego is always going to be there. And that I have to identify that it's coming so that I can kill it.
Yeah.
Or else I'm stuck in the same patterns that I was when I was younger.
Right.
So again, missing something.
Sure.
Just feeling that there was a gap. I could have more. I could be more. And competing in CrossFit, but also then leaving CrossFit. We opened up a subculture company called SickFit. And SickFit was like, Reebok to Nike. It was started by a CrossFitter, and it had really good intentions in being a clothing company and an online apparel.
Sure.
I always said I didn't want to sell women's clothes. That was just kind of my thing. I didn't want to go out and market that type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
I wanted to teach more. I wanted to be more. So after opening up a few gyms and on the verge of franchising and dealing with, tort, I would say, in the industry, right? We had, I'm sure you're pretty vocal in your own sense, but there's a number 2 in the organization who comes from the Navy SEALs, and he runs the business of CrossFit at a very aggressive level, and I respect the shit out of him for what he's done for the brand, but he came after us.
Okay.
And he specifically tried to shut down the events and the things we were doing around the world,
right?
Which was before everything had changed again in the CrossFit world. We were the first ones to go and kind of do these really big comps and do them all around the country and go overseas. So I left that with bad taste in my mouth. And again, it was me, right? You talk about this all the time with the universe, man. Like, I was fighting it.
Sure.
Even sober, I was fighting it. So we sell the gym in 2016 and the brand, and I'm kind of in this lost space again, and I start to realize that there's a lot that I don't know. And for a while there, being one of the first CrossFitters, coming from a fitness background, having great success early, being an entrepreneur, I thought, man, it's always going to be like this. It's always going to be gravy, right? Yeah. Especially flipping houses.
Sure.
I made $150,000 in a week on a house in Indio. Indio might as well be parts of West Phoenix.
Yeah.
And timing's everything. So unfulfilled, I spent 6 months to a year taking a small section of my clients around the world on these adventure trips. And I had immersed myself in the physical and mental side of training. I've done SEAL Fit Kokoro twice, World's Toughest Mudder 24 hours 3 times. So, the physical and the mental was always there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the emotional was always kind of covered.
Yeah.
It was hidden.
Sure.
And although I could express myself in what I thought, I'd just been carrying a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So this is all tying back to not only what I'm doing now, but ultimately how the Fathers of the Future movement for me is truly my purpose in life. And at some point, these guys, my son turns 13 in like 16 days.
Yeah.
It won't be about them.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to continue about being other fathers.
Yeah.
Because I realize now how big that gap was for me and what I experienced. I didn't know how to shave, and I didn't know how to, start a business. And those two game changers for me are, my son's going to know those things. He knows the business side now.
Yeah.
He's just not shaving yet.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the lessons that I'm finding that I learned in my process of both being a father, but also being a son that grew up without a father.
Yeah.
And there's a certain element that goes inside of that it makes me question everything now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the edge of 41 here.
Yeah.
And I've gone through a lot of experiences, good, bad, happy, sad, emotional, like we all have. The difference is now I take extreme ownership of every breath,
Mm-hmm.
the good ones and the bad ones.
Yep.
And the ones that I had in the past, seeing my mom lose her life and lose a battle with just being happy and healthy,
Mm-hmm.
and then finding her the way that I did in her home at 24. Like, I couldn't put a picture up of my mom for a decade in the house.
Yeah.
And now there's a big, big mural in our office.
How'd you lose her?
She had a stroke,
Uh-huh.
but the stroke came from an overdose from prescription medication.
Mm.
So both my mom and my dad were, children of the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was 68 when she passed away and had no intention on taking her own life,
Yeah.
but also no intention on slowing her roll.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? And I can, smile with you about that now, because it's like, all right, we're 14, 15 years removed.
Mm-hmm.
My son and my daughter know that I am clean and sober, that I don't party, that I don't waste energy or time, dealing with that because of what I experienced and what I went through as a son.
Yeah. What was if you had to pinpoint a moment, a person, a situation, a catalyst for your change and your evolution as a man, a father, human being, what would that be?
So I'm going to give a shout out to my wife in this, as if it wasn't for her, she wouldn't have brought these kids into the world.
Yeah.
And having dated someone since we were 15, 16 years of age, you do a lot of stupid shit.
Sure.
And I did that to her for about 2 decades. And to have someone, I will say, with her caliber of a human being, not to mention her expertise in, as an executive in the world of business.
Oh yeah, she's solid.
Oh,
man.
she's a hustler, and she's in New York right now, hustling away.
Okay.
And I would give it to her because she put up with a lot of shit. Now, the end result is fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I say that not just about, what I went through in those transitions, but where we are collectively as a family and a unit of 4. I don't travel the country or the world right now to speak or to teach or to do anything, because I'm getting to live 2 childhoods. And I say that my kids know how much they mean to me and how much time and energy I spend on them. I don't travel to speak because I'd be gone as much as, my wife is. And we have this combination and this flow that works really well.
Yeah.
We travel together as a family, but she travels a lot for work.
Sure.
And that's one of the exchanges that we have in this relationship. So I would definitely say her, considering we met in 7th grade and she knew my mom well, and, and we were also very close to being on the verge of not
Yeah.
being together. She almost got married. I got engaged.
Wow.
And then to be here now,
Mm-hmm.
in what I believe this city plays a big part in
Sure.
our blessing as well.
Yeah.
Had I stayed in LA or Southern California or been close to home
Mm-hmm.
or Hawaii,
Yeah.
I might have not been able to keep my family and
Sure.
definitely not allow them to thrive the way we all have in the past 12 years.
Yeah.
We've lived in this home for 12 years in December.
Okay.
Before that, my wife and I had lived in a combined, she was in 37, I was in 39 from the time we were born.
Mm-hmm.
And my son knows 2 houses, 2 cities. My daughter knows 1 house, 1 city, 1 street.
Mm-hmm.
To me, we've changed the code.
Yeah.
I'm not following in
Mm-hmm.
the patterns that my dad set.
Yeah.
I've been studying a lot of epigenetics
Sure. Yep.
and understanding that we have collectively inherited the history of mankind,
Mm-hmm.
and that the, stress, the anxiety, the fear, the anger,
Mm-hmm.
the rage,
Yeah.
I was born with that.
Yeah.
And the environment shifts it a little
Mhm.
bit, but it's who I am. It's how
Yeah.
I'm sure both of your kids are completely different.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Cameron's my stoic and
Yeah.
Tristan's my wild child. It makes it makes a very interesting dynamic because we had Tristan for 2 years before Cameron came along, and it just left us asking the question, like how will Cameron be, how someone is and who they are, I feel are different. Who they are is learned, but who she is, who he is, that's the epigenetic part. That's the what comes naturally.
Yeah.
That's the nature part. We are the nurture. So it's been very interesting, not just the male-female dynamic, but just the personality dynamic that they each inherently have naturally. But I also believe that they will emulate what they see as parents, in their parents, in terms of how they perceive the world and act and show up in the world. And one of the things that Nicole and I have promised each other and held each other accountable for is not hiding our emotion from our kids. Specifically as a man, as a father, the first time I saw my dad cry was when my brother was facing some jail time. And the day that he went away and my dad had to hug him and say goodbye, it's the first and only time I've ever seen my dad cry. And then as I went through my journey in personal growth and development, and I realized that for myself, I had to unlearn the masculine prowess of the ego and not perceiving emotion as a weakness. And so when I'm emotional, I don't stuff it down.
Yeah.
I express it, get through it, and allow my children to witness that. And when my children also get to witness my wife and I work through our stuff, as much friction as there may be, it's productive and it's done with love, and I think that them being able to witness that, the best way I know how to put it, I met my wife at my best friend's wedding, who married her cousin. And I got to see her entire family tree operate in one space. And the one thing I knew about my wife before I got to know my wife is that she knows what love looks like. She has an expectation of me as her man, as her husband, as the father of her children, as to how I'm supposed to show up. And now it's up to me to fulfill and exceed that standard.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's very, very important when you're trying to crack that relationship code. And it's one thing to get to know you as a person. It's a whole nother deal to know where you come from. And I think that to get to know you as a person, as deep as we could get, right? You can only get so deep. Right. But when you get to see the family tree, that epigenetic part, that expectation of what a successful relationship looks like, what their interpretation of love is, right, is massive. And that has allowed us to really thrive in our relationship, and that has trickled down into the way we raise our kids. And that is a dynamic that I feel is extremely rare. Yeah. You agree?
Well, I would say that happily married is rare these days. Right? Like staying married is rare these days.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my wife all the time, this wouldn't be as much fun if you were someone else.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
the history that we have, she's about to come up on being a part of my life longer than my mom was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's some heavy shit to look back on and say, man, I've been with this woman, you know, for that long.
Yeah.
And we have this phenomenal relationship built on the same core values and foundation that we agree, but we're also complete opposite.
Sure.
Like, we see how our kids are completely different, and they have pieces of us in each of them.
Yeah.
But our polarities are oftentimes complete yin and yang.
Yeah.
And
but that's also balance.
Oh, huge.
Right?
Huge balance.
It's not an oppositional force.
Yeah.
Right? That's where a lot of people interpret that dynamic is they work against each other. But when you raise your level of awareness and you're constructively growing together, you know, you're mutually supportive of so you're running parallel lanes, then you can take those, what would at a surface level be an oppositional dynamic, and figure out how they fill each other's gaps. And that's what makes a very happy, constructive relationship. And that level of awareness is what allows you to move through those periods of friction, because it takes work, but it shouldn't be work, is the way I like to put it.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people, you know, get lost in that cliche, you know, oh, it's, you know, a successful relationship is work. I'm like, fuck no. No, it's not. It takes work. You have to work at it for sure. But, like, I don't look at my relationship with my wife like it's a second job.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean? And that, I think there's a very distinct line in the sand there. And, you know, I don't think that a lot of people get deep enough in knowing themselves and understanding what they really want in a partner, so that they're able to set that expectation, right? I can't tell you how many people express, you know, when they look at Nicole and I, or they hear our story, you know, like, oh, I want that. I'm like, why can't you have that?
Yeah.
You know, like I held out, she held out. Nicole's 5 years older than me. You know, we got married when I was 30. And like the best thing I could have done was wait. You know, I met her when I was 26. 26-year-old Michael was not prepared to be who Nicole needed as a man. And people get really wrapped up in, oh, it needs to happen right now. Like, it should have happened by now. And what they really need to realize is you are not who you need to be for the partner that you desire. Otherwise, they'd be here by now. And like I express that as much as possible for those that are willing to listen and objectively entertain the conversation. But that's a very tough pill to swallow if you don't have enough life behind you, or you haven't done the self-work to understand what that actually means to be happy, to find who your life partner is in terms of the avatar of that person.
You could put that into perspective with both money and bodies, right? Think about somebody who's overweight. They would instantly say, I would trade everything I have for that body. And you give it to them, boom. And within 24 hours, they go back to eating the way they were, or they don't commit to waking up early and putting in that work. Same thing with money. Like, you are where you are because you've done what you've done. And, you know, I'm in the business of talking people both, you know, off of the ledge and off of the soapbox. It has to be that balance between both. And oftentimes people, they want it instantly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most of the time they do. But this whole thing, I just wrote a post this morning on being a dad.
Yeah.
Is it about the long game?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can be a dad for the rest of your life as long as both you and your kids are alive.
Right.
So when you kick their ass or beat them up physically, verbally, emotionally, when you get on them every day, like, I stopped telling them to brush their teeth and wash their hands. I just said, do you know what to do? Either do it or you don't. And I can hear mom say like 4 or 5, 6 times.
Yeah.
Well, they stop listening. So maybe they're not truly doing what we asked them to do, but they'll do what we're doing.
Right.
So maybe I go brush my teeth. Maybe I wash my hands and say, come over here. But just taking a different approach than the standard.
Yeah. The invitation I've found is more powerful than the demand. Come do this with me. Let me show you how this is done, right? And that's paid huge dividends. Even though my son is just 3, you know, he's way more receptive to, hey, let's go do this together. Yeah. You know, than, hey, you know, the snap, the finger, the point. You know, and you've mentioned that you've put yourself through these long, grueling mental and physical challenges. The Kokoro. The Spartan, the you know, these long periods of physical and mental strain, but because of your background going into those things, they didn't facilitate the emotional growth that you were looking for. And I've told people numerous times that there's a point in your life where intentionally discovering that dark place serves you. And once you get enough life behind you, assuming that you've achieved a level of happiness, success, and fulfillment, the discovery of that dark place no longer serves you. And to facilitate the discovery of that dark place, it oftentimes comes in the form of a physical challenge of some sort, the Kokoro. And what purpose did going through that program, not once but twice, serve for you?
So it's been a while since I've been through that, but I'll tie this into it as well. I still have to suffer every day. And, you know, I'm not Goggins here by any regards, but I've just realized now that the more pain I can put myself through, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, the more I grow. Okay. So, you know, I still can turn up the intensity in a snapshot. I just am choosing to do it off of, you know, the rubber mat and a barbell and more on a mountain now. Yeah. So, you know, going into a Kokoro, the physical part of it, I knew would set me apart from most of the guys. I've been training since I was, you know, a kid, never taking a season off, never missing, you know, long periods of time without exercising and moving and playing sports. Right. So 41 years of that, it's, you know, you get muscle memory and your recruitment muscles, as we talked about earlier with my daughter, I can move. And because I can move, I started chasing the mental side of it when I came in 4th place 4 competitions in a row in CrossFit. Okay. And I was like, dude, what you got to stop kicking the bar. Yeah. Like, you know, I went and, you know, hired some coaches, and it was like, all right, I mentally get comfortable to a certain point that I just go, oh man, I can't do anymore. Right. And that's when I started to dive into the science, the biology, the mentality of, you know, high performing guys, and SEAL Fit popped up. Okay. And I went the first time, and the guy I took was a client of mine, and he tapped out. And I think they had almost 8 guys tap out of 22. Yeah. Well, I finished, but I didn't finish the way I knew I could. Sure. I was droning. Okay. Okay. So military term, when you're not present. And I got really good at that. Just right. Right.
One foot
just
in front of the
marching,
other.
You know, where am I? Who cares? Who knows? Okay, I'm done. I finished. Yeah. So the second time I wanted to go back, and I wanted to finish strong. I wanted to go back to be Iron Man.
Yeah.
And I'm competing against military athletes and guys who are actually in the Navy who either got recycled from becoming a SEAL, or they're not even close to where they need to be.
Right.
And so much respect. We talked about this on the Fathers of the Future podcast. I'm a civilian at heart, but I have the mindset now and the physicality to operate at a tactical level. And that's given me so much growth in preparing for life. You know, so the second time I went back with a guy named Ben Greenfield, Ben Greenfield Fitness. Yeah, he's a biohacker. A very intelligent guy. And right away, him and I were competing for this kind of Ironman thing. I didn't even know who he was before that. It's all said and done. I finished strong. You know, I carried the rock for the last 2 hours and never put it down. Scratches, cuts all over me. We've been up for 60 hours. And they sat me down, Commander Mark Devine, the founder, and he said, "You're phenomenal physically, but you're very weak mentally. You kept going to your truck to get supplies, and where were you? Coconut water? Was our Gatorade not good enough for you?" And he just went down this list of all the times I served myself.
Oh shit! Yeah.
And it was like 3-minute break. Go get changed, change your socks and underwear, run to the car while everybody's eating. You know. What the standard issued food was. Right. I was off with my little, you know, post CrossFit nutritional package. Yeah. And I got my dick kicked in for it. And I said, that's cool. I didn't come here just for that. But leaving there, again, one more thing that you learn about yourself. And that's why now I've really applied being stoic and living stoic. Yeah. My son, you know, he's a Whole Foods king, right? He's the prince of Whole Foods. and you know, to think about what we have that the rest of the world doesn't have. Right. I'll stop, pump my brakes, both of us sometimes, and be like, dude, we have enough food in our pantry to eat for the next 2 weeks. We don't need to go to Whole Foods. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And that's the stuff that I want to teach them, because that's the stuff I'm learning. Right? I didn't have pop to be like, we're not going to waste this. You're not going to be entitled. Like, I just learned it by, like, you know, almost dying and not living. Yeah. And that combination just made me realize that every day is an opportunity to become better and to learn about who you are. You know, because nobody can teach you that. Right, right. You have to experience it.
100%. The experience that you're talking about, it's extremely interesting that in a civilian program like the Kokoro, or at least a program where civilians are invited, that's a principle that they're proactively teaching and they're catching on to, so that lesson can be taught. Because as a leader, right, in the military, we are, as Marines, our leaders eat last, right? You're bound to this creed where you make sure the hierarchy is the mission, your Marines and me, right? And whatever's left, that's what you get as a leader. And you don't think twice about it. But we, as a culture, in the armed forces and the Marine Corps, are taught that, right? That's not a lesson that is readily available out here in the civilian world. That's...
I'm just glad it wasn't me. I was like, oh, man.
It's really interesting, though, that that's what you took home with you. Because how powerful is that in terms of your ability to, having experienced that for yourself, and now your ability to lead and make better men, right? That principle of servant leadership.
I would have had a plaque, and what that would have done was given my ego more versus having a reality of why I didn't, you know, get that coveted title with a group of 20 people, one of them being a, you know, phenomenal athlete himself. It it was a part of why I went there. And thank goodness I almost went a third time, because always chasing.
Sure.
What I've learned in my last few years of growth is that although am no longer drinking and partying, living that lifestyle, I sedated through fitness.
Yeah.
And I tell that to people, and they kind of look at me. And I'm like, yeah, when you go and run for 24 hours, you're running away from something.
Sure.
You have to be a little mental, a little sick.
Yeah.
And you truly don't want to face whatever you got to deal with, because it's the way that I completely just let go.
Yeah, it's a justifiable addiction.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I've had to learn that. And even for about a 90-day period last year, I was only allowed, I set the standard to train 20 minutes a day.
Okay.
And I did that, and I realized that it was affecting other areas. So I needed to have more. It ignites me.
Sure.
Right? Yep. It activates me. So, no more 24-hour stuff.
Yeah.
No more crazy. But now I train, every day for, 30 to 60 minutes. Every now and again, I'll allow myself a 90 or 2-hour session.
Sure.
But if I'm broken, then it's not serving me for what I need.
Right.
If I hit it so hard that I have to take a 3-hour nap at 10 in the morning, that's not the right program for me.
No.
Double Murph, ain't it?
Yeah. It blows my mind that to have known you and been in the same circle with you for so long, that it's taken our collective evolution as men, as entrepreneurs, as fathers, to finally get to this space, right? Because in talking to you, specifically when in your CrossFit and SickFit days, there was, and I know as I was building CrossFit PHX, very much living on CrossFit PHX Island. Like I wasn't interested in what was going on out in the community as much as we preach and foster and build community, right? And you have to, that's all ego, and I've come to a level of understanding in terms of what it means to live abundantly, to realize that while being a servant leader, I'm not here to serve everybody. I'm here to serve and lead those that want to be served and led by me. And that is one of the things that I find most interesting in what you're doing now is you understand that your message, your flavor isn't for everybody, and it's not supposed to be. When did that switch flip for you?
I left that world in 2006. And by the way, we are live and outside, so we got to expect it, all right? It's the first time under 200 degrees in 6 months out here, so we're enjoying it.
It's all good, man.
So I carried so much from my childhood into my 20s, my mom, my dad, into my 30s.
Yeah.
The alcohol, the partying, that when I got into CrossFit and I found out who the Wizard of Oz was.
Yeah.
I started to carry it, right? Like you got your level 1 cert. We were the host facility, and we would give out all our scholarship spots because we just wanted the community to grow and grow.
Right.
But then on Monday, one of the coaches would come in and say, hey, I'm opening up a CrossFit down the road. And, oh, yeah, by the way, I'm taking 20 members. And, oh, yeah, we're going to charge half of what so I carried that, and that just became more resentment.
Yeah.
Like I was the healthiest, most pissed off, sober dude in town.
Yeah.
Even to where like there was a box owner, and he was kind of stealing our IP for a little while. And I found out about it, and I saw him at regionals and behind stage before we went out to compete. I was like in his face telling him, I'm gonna catch you.
Yeah.
And that's the shit I was doing when I was drinking. And that's not me. Like, it's just not. That's an old version of me. So carrying the resentment of being an affiliate owner and a competitor, like, I didn't even realize that about 5-year period, I was so selfish inside of it.
Yeah.
A, I didn't know how to express myself. And B, we were very early adopters in it where we had to go through some of those things because there was no rules.
Right.
There was no respect. It was the wild, wild west, as we called it.
Sure.
And I carried that until about a year and a half in, after not having a gym, after not having a place. My kids grew up. We were in that location for 9 years.
Yeah.
So, and we sold it to a guy who was a friend of mine who turned it back into a CrossFit. So, you know, it was just this full circle, right? Where I would see guys that I, you know, told, I never want to see you again. You're a punk. I see them out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, their gyms are done now, right? Because they opened and then they closed. They weren't in it for the long game, and they weren't evolving. It was purely teaching one system. So I dove into my own spirit. I dove in, and my personal development was really just how I had to learn how to let go.
Yeah.
So much so of like, okay, going from one extreme with, you know, SEAL Fit and military training to the opposite end of spirituality and hiring a Buddhist teacher to teach me the principles and laws of letting go. They kill the ego and they let go.
Yeah.
And I needed both of those things.
Sure. What are the core values of Fathers of the Future?
Great question. So to be present, active, and engaged. It's the hierarchy. To be present, you have to be there. You see my license plate rolling around town, says show up on it. And that's my number one key to having anything you want.
Yeah.
I would sign up for things in my past and not go.
Really?
I remember doing a triathlon. Signed up for it. I was like 22 years old and just decided not to go because it would have been too much work.
Wow.
And I don't think I was training for it the right way. I quit my freshman basketball team. Those stories are chapters in the entire episode.
Sure.
So to be present is the key. And that is not just physically.
Yeah.
You have to emotionally be present. So to be active, right? There's a lot of dads out there who they may coach their kids in sports, but they're not playing sports with their kids. That's key.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to teach them what I know, and then I'm going to have them challenge me as I get older.
Sure.
And I want to be able to continue playing those sports and exercising. Yesterday I trained with my son at a local CrossFit. Today I'm coming to CrossFit PHX to train with my daughter. Like, that's where our relationship gets fortified.
Yeah.
Is being active. And my kids love it. People complain and say it's social media, it's video games, it's Fortnite.
Yeah.
No, it's you being lazy.
Yeah.
You don't want to go outside when it's 120 degrees. I'll roll.
Yeah.
And then the third piece is being engaged. And that's asking serious questions, finding out what's happening at school, what's happening on sports.
Yeah.
You know, it's truly just being engaged in everything that they're doing so that there is no question mark. And that so that, you know, a big part of why I drifted when I was young is because nobody was really watching over me. I was a phenomenal bullshit artist, but at the same time, nobody was there to grab me by the back of my neck and say, son, you're not quitting your freshman basketball team.
Right.
At the end of the year, if you decide.
Finish what you start.
Yeah, but there's no way. And you want to quit. Why? Because you're the eighth man, and you're the eighth man because you don't practice, and you're not trained. Like, all of that.
Yeah.
Was what I'm teaching my kids now is what the movement is about.
Yeah.
Now, that's in being a father.
Yeah.
But we can't become a good father until we become a great man.
Right.
So I break these guys down physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, find out where the gaps are.
Sure.
And a lot of my coaching is just one-on-one, face-to-face or video. But the big part of what we do with the Fathers of the Future movement is we created a program called the Crucible.
Okay.
And similar to SEAL Fit, we've taken the physical and mental piece of that and tied in the emotional and the spiritual part of, you know, going through a lot of deep work myself and, you know, letting go of resentment, having a conversation about the trauma, sharing my experiences, and putting a program together that is full submission.
Yeah.
So, you know, when these guys show up to the doors of the Crucible, we have a 15-hour day mapped out where you are disconnected, unplugged, you are not under control. We are driving you everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You do not know what's coming or what's next. And there's a video out there, but we switch it up every time.
Yeah.
We add things, we change things,
Mm-hmm.
because men need to be shooken up.
Right.
And if I give you a book or I have you watch a video, that's great, that's fine, and then you go back to reality.
Right.
Because you have to disconnect from the matrix
Mm-hmm.
and fully just be present.
Yeah.
And go through physical and mental and emotional evolutions.
Sure.
It's such an awakening
Mm-hmm.
part of nothing I've ever done quite like this.
Yeah.
When I got back from SEAL Fit, we took that to our gym so
Okay.
that we could be a licensed
Yep.
SEAL Fit coach.
Sure.
And we did a program called Hell Week where we would take men and women and for
Mhm.
an hour in the morning and an hour at night for 5 days.
Okay.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
It was painful. It was hard, but it was fun.
Right.
This has so much more meaning to it.
Mm-hmm.
So people will often ask, well, what's this about? Is it a boot camp, right? Is it this? Is it that? It's a wake up.
Yeah.
And it's done in a way that I'm sure like you, ever program or prescribe anything I'm not willing to do myself.
100%. Yeah.
So these experiences of being on the side of a mountain, disconnected, grounded, chanting, doing dynamic meditation,
Yeah.
primal yelling, screaming at the top of your lungs because deep down inside you've never let that animal out.
Yeah.
That's the power of what we're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's massive, man. I'm happy to now be in your circle and not just walking around you. I think that having witnessed your evolution from afar and now being able to experience it in genuine dialogue is great. And I think that it's now is the time to have this authentic conversation. I appreciate you being present today. For my 20 percenters out there that are looking for that enrichment, that Fathers of the Future experience, where can they find and support you?
Yeah. Well, I just joined the Facebook group, so super excited about that, man. Yeah, super excited.
Yeah.
And right now we're in downtown Old Town Scottsdale. That's where my office is, overlooking the canal. But you can find me on all social channels. Luke Kayyem, LukeKayyem.com. At anywhere, it's all Luke Kayyem. And then of course, fathersofthefuture.com. We got 3 crucibles coming up here in Scottsdale, especially with this amazing weather.
Mm-hmm.
October 12th, November 7th, and December 6th, right in there.
Okay.
And you don't have to be from here. We got guys coming in from out of state, out of town.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, man, I want to see you at our New Year network. You should have got an email about that today. It's going to be a massive transformational immersion that we're hosting through the 20 percenters. And I got Aaron Hind on board to keynote it, so I'm super pumped about it. You'll get the details about that here pretty soon, but this is my personal invite to the event. I really appreciate you sharing space, man. I appreciate you being present. And for my 20 percenters out there, remember, focus on the things that matter: health, wealth, relationships, and time. We'll see you next week.